The group of college students were thrill seekers, always looking for their next adventure. When they heard about this supposedly haunted asylum on the outskirts of town, they knew they had to check it out. As they made their way through the abandoned corridors, they could feel the weight of the building's history pressing down on them. They had heard stories of the brutal treatment the patients had endured, and they knew many of them had died there. But as the night wore on, strange things began to happen. Doors would slam shut on their own, footsteps echoed through the halls, and they could hear whispers and moans coming from the empty rooms. At first they had tried to brush it off, convincing themselves that it was just their imagination. But as the night wore on, the presence of the spirits became more and more intense. They could see shadows moving in the corners of their eyes, and they felt cold fingers brushing against their skin. As they tried to make their way out of the asylum, they realized that the spirits of the patients who had died there were still roaming the halls, seeking revenge on the living. They were trapped in the building with no way out and no means of defense against the vengeful spirits. One by one, the students were picked off by the ghosts, dragged away into the darkness, never to be seen again. As the survivors huddled together, they realized that they would have to face the ghosts head-on if they were to stand any chance of escaping alive. In a final desperate act, the students fought back against the spirits, using everything they had to banish them from the asylum. But even as they stepped out into the sunlight, they knew that the spirits would always be with them, haunting their dreams and reminding them of the horrors they had witnessed. The young woman slowly regained consciousness, her head pounding with a dull ache. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she realized she was in a small windowless room. Panic set in as she realized she had no memory of how she got there. Desperate to escape, she searched for a way out, feeling along the walls and floor for any sign of a door. As she stumbled around the room, she heard faint whispers coming from somewhere nearby. She followed the sound and soon discovered a small vent in the wall, barely large enough to fit her hand through. She peered inside and saw a group of people huddled together in a similar room, all looking just as lost and scared as she felt. They explained that they had been kidnapped and imprisoned in the dark rooms, but none of them knew why or by whom. As they worked together to find a way out, they realized that something sinister was going on. They could hear strange noises coming from outside their rooms, and they knew they were being watched. One night, the young woman was pulled from her room and thrown into a bright, sterile lab. She saw other prisoners being experimented on with wires and tubes hooked up to their bodies. The scientists overseeing the experiment were cold and unfeeling, treating the prisoners like lab rats rather than human beings. The young woman discovered that they were being used for a twisted experiment, one that involved manipulating their memories and emotions. The scientists were trying to create the perfect soldier, one who was fearless and obedient. As the young woman fought to keep her own memories intact, she began to realize that the only way out was to band together with the other prisoners and escape. They devised a plan and worked tirelessly to break free from their captors. In a heart-pounding final act, the prisoners broke out of their cells and fought their way through the lab, taking down guards and destroying equipment as they made their way to the next exit. As they finally stepped out into the daylight, they knew that they had won their freedom, but they also knew that they would never forget the horrors they had endured at the hands of their captors. The sun had set, casting an eerie darkness over the forest. The group of friends huddled around the fire, feeling uneasy as they heard strange noises in the distance. They had been camping for 2 days and were supposed to return home today, but they realized they had lost their way back to civilization. As they tried to settle in for the night, they began to hear whispers in the woods. At first they thought it was just the wind, but the whispers grew louder and closer until they could no longer ignore them. Suddenly they saw shadows moving in the darkness, as if someone or something was watching them. As the days went by, the friends began to notice more strange occurrences. They woke up to find their tents ripped open, their food and supplies missing, and their campsite in disarray. They knew they were not alone in the woods. One night, one of the friends, Jake, decided to go for a walk to clear his head. As he walked deeper into the woods, he suddenly felt a cold breeze, despite the warm summer night. He looked up to see a figure standing in front of him, shrouded in darkness. He tried to run, but the figure followed him, closing in with each step. His screams echoed through the woods, but his friends were too far away to hear him. The next morning, the friends found Jake's torn-up clothes scattered throughout the campsite, but his body was nowhere to be found. They knew they had to get out of the woods as soon as possible, but they were lost and had no idea which direction to go. As they frantically searched for a way out, they stumbled upon an abandoned cabin. It was old and run down, with cobwebs covering the walls and broken windows. Despite the creepy atmosphere, the friends decided to take refuge in the cabin, hoping it would protect them from whatever was out in the woods. But the cabin proved to be even more dangerous than the woods. They soon realized they were not alone, and they had stumbled into the lair of a cannibalistic serial killer who had been hiding out in the woods for years. The friends were forced to fight for their lives as the killer stalked them through the cabin, picking them off one by one. It was a race against time as they tried to escape the cabin and make their way back to civilization before the killer could catch up to them. The moment the family laid eyes on the old Victorian-style house nestled in the countryside, they knew it was perfect for them. It was spacious, had a big yard for the kids to play in, and seemed like the ideal place to start over. They were excited to begin their new life there, but little did they know that the house held a dark secret. From the moment they moved in, they could feel a strange presence in the house. Doors would open and close on their own, objects would move inexplicably, and they heard faint whispers and giggles coming from the empty rooms. One night, the youngest daughter, Lily, woke up in the middle of the night to find a little girl standing at the foot of her bed. The girl had long tangled hair and wore a white dress stained with blood. Lily screamed and the family rushed into her room, but there was no one there. The family began to investigate the history of the house and discovered that the little girl had been murdered there years ago. The killer was never caught, and the murder had remained a cold case ever since. As they delved deeper into the mystery, strange things began to happen. The family received threatening letters warning them to stay away from the case. They found hidden passageways in the house leading to secret rooms filled with old newspapers and documents that shed light on the girl's murder. The more they uncovered, the more dangerous their situation became. The killer was still out there, and he would stop at nothing to keep the family from discovering the truth. As they raced against time to solve the murder and bring the killer to justice, they became trapped in a web of secrets and lies, unsure who they could trust. They were not only fighting for their own safety, but for the soul of the little girl who had been murdered in their home. In the end, they uncovered the truth about what happened to the little girl and brought her killer to justice. But the memory of the haunting and traumatic experience would stay with them forever, reminding them that some secrets are better left buried.